All right, let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the opportunity to learn and also to empower us to take action, and may we follow through on some of these things we're going to be challenged with. Thank you for being with us through this weekend. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Judd, the time's yours.
I noticed Marty put the time management presentation first, which means I'm under pressure to be on time. So, and what I have to share with you really is based on a graduate class that I teach, and I have about 20 minutes to share it with you, but I'm only going to hit the highlights. This is a time management system that I developed years ago in some doctoral studies that I did, and I've taught it to pastors over the years, and now I teach it at Southern in our graduate program. I call it Circles of Destiny Time Management System. And if you think about time management, if you boil it down to its essence, it really is about event control. Philosophers over the years have a consensus that time is best described as events, the sequential flow of one event after the other. So time management then is the control of events associated with your life. Let's see, this is not going right. Okay, I was going to, all right, we'll just do it this way. So you'll notice at the outer part of the circle, these are concentric circles. And what's most important is the core. And I'm starting at the outer circle, event control. That's boiled down to its essence what time management is. Next, you have techniques. Techniques of time management are using time twice. When you're driving in the car, you want to listen to a book on tape or the Bible on tape, or you want to get as much as you can done in 5 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour of time. That's techniques of efficiency. If you go to Amazon and type in time management, you get hundreds and hundreds of books. And if you read those books, most of them start with techniques. They give you techniques of efficiency. But the point of this circles, the concentric circles here, is that that's not where real-time management starts. It starts at the core. The core is what we call core values. That is who you are as a person. That's your value system. That's what is most important to you in life. That's the principles by which you live your life, kind of like the principles of the Constitution of the United States. That's how we govern ourselves as a nation. Your values are how you govern yourself as a person. So that's where you want to start, is articulating your most important values in life. More on that in a moment. Then if you look at the next circle, you have goal units, organizer, action list, implementation, techniques, which all of that leads to event control. So by concentric circles, it starts with the core, the next circle issues out of that, and on it goes. So goals are a big word in time management. But if your goals are not congruent with your highest values, you're going to be incongruent. You may have goals to be really successful in your business and to make a lot of money and to achieve this and to achieve that, but if that ruins your family life, then you're incongruent. If family is a higher priority to you than your work, then it will show up as your values. And you will be guided by your values, and you will not allow the desire to achieve success in your career to supersede the importance of your spouse and your children. That's the idea here of the circles. It's continuity from the core outside. So you have goals, and there's a whole system of how to articulate goals. I call them goal units. A goal is a statement with a series of sub-goals, a goal unit. And then you prioritize all of these, and they are articulated in the framework of your core values. And then an organizer, well, historically organizers are like the classic daytimers and the Franklin systems. Now we all carry our organizers with us in our iPhone. And there are a myriad of apps on time management that you can use, and Some of them are really good. Then you have the action list. That's the classic to-do list, where you want to list what you want to do every day. This is in the Apple phone. It's automatically put in there. There's a place where you can type in your to-do list. And that has been a classic practice of time management from its very origin at the beginning of the 20th century, is articulating a to-do list. But in this case, the to-do list issues out of the framework of your prioritized goals and your prioritized values. That way you have continuity all the way up through what you're attempting to accomplish each day. And then, of course, techniques of efficiency. That comes after these most important issues of planning and prioritizing. Oh, and I should say implementation. Implementation involves planning, scheduling, motivation, things like that. So there you have it in a nutshell. And I want to leave you, because this is like a TED Talk, with a main point, all right? And I want to leave you with the importance of core values. Now look at this illustration. This is an analogy that's been used before. You may have heard of it before, but I don't find anything better than this. The sand in this visual here, the sand and rocks. Sand represents the daily details of life. And rocks represent those values that are more important. Now, think about this sand, the daily grind, from brushing your teeth to taking out the garbage, commuting to work, and dealing with the myriad of issues you have. These are the daily sands of life that we have to deal with. For a moment, turn to someone sitting next to you, and just for a moment, describe what do you see as the sands of your daily life, all right? The daily details of life. Just describe them briefly. All right, because my time is short, we could go on with this, but wonder if, rattle off some of your sands, your grains of sand. Somebody just, let's hear a few right now, out loud, just really quick. Traffic, have mercy on that. Yes. Garbage. Take out the garbage, absolutely. Another one or two. Paying bills. That's right. What else? Email. Amen. Oh, email can overwhelm you. So these are the daily details of life. Rocks. What about those more important issues in life? Do the sands of life tend to overwhelm those higher values in life? What would be, as Christians, what would be our most important value? God, isn't it? It's going to be God. What would you say would be number two? Your career? Your family. That's right. After that, it could be the larger network of friends, and then you could get down to principles that, would integrity be of value, important to you? And seeking excellence in everything that you do? These are principles that we want to live our lives by. And I'll bet if we had more time, I would give you an hour to list all of the values or principles that are important to you that you want to live your life by. That's the big rocks. Now, according to this analogy, it goes like this. Oh, okay, there we go, rocks. My PowerPoint has changed a little bit as we put it on the thumb drive. So the rocks are at the core. Okay, it's missing something here. This is a different, oh, I see what happened. Okay, well, I've lost my visuals. That's all right. Put the wrong presentation on the thumb drive. I had Marty 1 and Marty 2. This is Marty 1. Okay, but that's all right. It's not all lost. Okay, picture this, all right? There's a jar, okay? You have a jar. And all those sands of life, we're going to pour those in that jar, okay? And now you've got the big rocks. Let's put the big rocks in, those important values. And as you put them in, you know what happens? You can't fit everything in. But what if we reverse it? And you put the big rocks in the jar first. You find that when you pour the sand in, see, it would have been nice to have the visual, as you can imagine. When you pour the sand in, it all fits. All the daily details of life and all the big rocks, all the most important values in your life. So the main point here is you want to start with the big rocks first in your life. Articulate your principles first and live according to them. Those are your highest priorities, and then everything else will fall into place. So start with the big rocks in your life. Identify the big rocks, list them, then write a paragraph of clarification by what you mean by each one of them, and then prioritize them, and that becomes the framework to live your life. Now, I have about 5 minutes left, which is what I'd planned on this time management presentation. So any questions you have, because obviously I can't, in the amount of time, address every issue, so maybe you have some questions you'd like me to address, but I can only be brief, as you understand. Accountability. Absolutely. Accountability, that could be a value itself. And accountability, when living these principles and practicing time well, very important. I think we know that accountability is across the board helpful in so many areas. Good point. Yes? That's right. That's Stephen Covey, famous time management teacher who said that. And that is, what is the main thing? It is those values, for sure. Yeah, and that's where, if you're living out of your principles, again, this is where we get between the important and urgent, and not urgent. And often the urgent and important matters will overcome us. And obviously, we have to deal with emergencies. But if you can deal with that out of a principled life, it can make a difference in the stress level. So, oh yes, those things are going to happen. But still, even then, if you're living out of that framework of principles, you're more a unified, integrated person. And you can deal with stress and emergencies better. Here's several books. I don't know if this is in the hard copy that Marty gave you, but The Time Trap by Alec McKenzie. If you want to deal with all those sands that can overwhelm you, this book is excellent in dealing with that. Margin is an amazing book that deals with balance in life. And are you living in the black or are you living in the red? Margin. Margin is when you're in the black, you're not in the red. And he uses that principle for companies in daily life. And to me, one of the most important books, most helpful books, is Gordon MacDonald. I read this when I was at seminary, Ordering Your Private World. How to integrate your own spiritual life and to walk with God and yet keep up with all the demands in your life. From a Christian perspective, that is one of the all-time classics. If you get one book, Ordering Your Private World by Gordon MacDonald, check it out on Amazon, well worth it. And time management, my mentor in time management that I studied under is Charles Hobbs. This book is no longer in print, but you can still get used copies of it at Amazon. This is probably the classic book and most important book ever written on time management, Time Power by Charles Hobbs. And of course, Stephen R. Covey, this classic has been around a long time, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, an extremely important book. Learning those 7 habits will make a profound difference in your life. So I believe my time is up. And may the Lord bless you in the management of your time. And remember, put the big rocks in first.
Yeah. Yeah, that margin piece, I think, is summed up on the time with Sabbath, too. I know that my life gets crazy, and God, in His wisdom, before sin even entered, He said, there needs to be this every 7 days where you just stop. Because it gets crazy during the week, but then it's like, okay, stop. And if we just take advantage of the Sabbath, I think that a lot of our problems would be minimized. One thing I want to say is I've got in my office a bunch of rocks on my chalk tray on my marker board, and I've used them over time to use this as a priority setting thing, and they move, okay? Your priorities move, like when your kids are out of the house, then your kids aren't quite up as high as they were. I mean, they're still a priority, but maybe finances are bumped up a little bit more because you're thinking about retirement and things like that. So it is a little bit of a changing thing. One thing I want to throw out here, is Judd still here? Yeah, is I have found for myself, and we're going to be getting into this when we talk about health, is self-care. Okay, we heard about that just right before lunch. But I Am Second. If you've never watched or looked at that website, you need to take a look at it. It's called I Am Second. Please go there. And all of these short videos are testimonials of really iconic people, really famous people that are Christians, but it's about their life of being second. God is first, I am second. And the message is, if I don't take care of me, then my spouse, I can't really be the optimum person to take care of her or my children and so on. And as guys, I think that most of us don't do well at self-care. We might have some recreational stuff, but that might be the extent of it. Okay, next we have Ed, and he's going to be talking to us about finance, and you should have an outline there of 9 points.
Thank you very much. There is an outline, as Marty mentioned, but let me give you just a little context of the outline. It does not go completely with the presentation, as it is a handout that's available for us to provide or give to our clients. So let me give you a background of what that entails. So I'm with Ameriprise Financial. I've been with them as a financial advisor for 30 years as of August 9th, which was also my 9th anniversary as a certified Kingdom advisor. And something unique that has happened is I've seen God working in a corporate world in a very unique way. We have an organization within our network of 11,000 advisors where approximately 1,000 advisors are a part of the Christian Franchise Advisor Network within our company. We meet regularly. We learn how to look at our practices from a stewardship standpoint and also be able to provide biblical advice. So the piece that you have is actually an approved home office material that I have copies of if you'd like a hard copy. And each of these concepts have a text marked with them. So as we go through things today, I will share with you the concept that is there, and there's also some text information that we can refer to as well. So Marty mentioned that I have 2 daughters. I'm from Florida, but my membership is at Georgia Cumberland Academy, where we have the privilege of having our daughters go through school. And my oldest daughter right now is at Loma Linda University. My youngest daughter is a junior at Southern. And Marty said when he saw some pictures of my cabin going in that you have to incorporate this into your talk somehow. So when I arrived, I found Terry, my Ellijay neighbor, which is adjoining our property. And so he said, I heard some hammering over there yesterday. So I was finishing up some things before coming over. And so the way to tie this together is I'm going to bring out a tape measure here. Give me 1 second. Does anybody have one of these? All right, so normally I saw my dad carrying one of these. For those of you who have never seen one, it is actually a way that you can measure things, okay? So they unfold, and you unfold these and figure out how long something is. Normally my dad carried it right here in this little side pouch that kind of sits to the side. That's where my cell phone goes now, you know, when I'm working. So this was kind of the older way of doing things. And then along came the tape measure. Now I know that's still used for masonry, but the tape measure came along, and it was a much easier way to control things. So you could lock in where everything was found, right? You notice how it's kind of curved? The purpose of that is to keep it from falling over, because if you turn it the other way, it falls over, right? So you can go a long distance and measure something. It's marked off at 16 inches in various places when you're laying out walls. Then there's also the unique way of doing things now, which is you run your ruler across there and electronically measure something, right? So these are all different ways of measuring things, but what can you tell me about them? Any idea? They work, and they all measure, right? So the truths about the measurement is an inch is an inch, a foot is a foot. And so what I want to share with you today is looking at the concept of financial advice. Financial advice is no different now, even though you can watch the stock market on the phone, you can have unique ways of thinking of how your assets are allocated and measured, but the biblical truths of finances are actually true today, no matter the way you think of investing. And we're going to look at 3 different principles of these concepts as we go. So if you think of yourself as a steward or an owner, that is a different concept between the two. So stewardship is an important aspect of being wise spiritually. And in the Bible, we have some references of stewardship. Can you think of a story that refers to the Bible about stewardship, being a good steward? The talents. Story of the talents. And there were 8 talents. A talent was approximately 75 pounds. And so in today's dollars, a talent would be worth about $1.4 million. So a talent was left with one individual. Another individual had how many talents? 2. And another had 5. So if they each doubled their talents, right, which is what 2 of them did, that 7 million turned into 14 million. Not a bad investment if you were the owner and this was your steward taking care of things. Another went from 1.4 to 2.8. And what happened to the one with 1 talent? What did he do with it? Buried it. And do you remember what he was asked when he came back and gave him the money? What was the question? If you would have at least put it in the bank, get a little interest, if say he would have gotten 1%, he would have made $14,000 instead of giving back his money. Now, it doesn't seem like much, but he said at least, what if you would have done this? So stewardship is a little different when we think about the use of money. We are considered to be stewards, so that's a different mindset when you think of what God has entrusted to you. You're stewards of your family. You were stewards of your health. There is scriptural definitions of stewardship, and it refers to the use of your time, your talent, and your treasure. Quite often, the only thing we think of is treasure or money, but you are responsible for the time that you invest as well. Stewardship is a part of giving. Fair is not equal. From that perspective, if your giving may not be equal to someone else's, it doesn't mean it's inappropriate. It's different. We all have different resources, we have different incomes, we have different responsibilities, and all of that has an impact on giving. If that was the case, I like to play basketball. I don't get paid to play basketball because I'm not good enough to play and get paid for it. But if that was the case, I would get paid like Michael Jordan, right? Right? Nope, but that's not the way it works. So giving should be in alignment with what we have. So a few years back, we have had a place in Calhoun, Georgia. I was spending my morning worship time contemplating, did my daughters know everything I want them to learn? So I started to write things down, what I wanted my daughters to learn and understand. And one of the things that I felt was important to them, in addition to having good mentors and becoming a teacher of somebody else, to have a spiritual walk with God, one of the things that was important to me is to get the concept in their minds that they should act their wage. So what do I mean by acting their wage? They're students. They're going to have an occupation, and they're going to be working at some point in time. And there is a tendency to want to go on to the next level. What am I going to do to increase my income? What am I going to do to buy my bigger house, my bigger car? So the idea is to understand what's important, what your lifestyle is to be, what you want it to be, and then from that concept to not be at a place of having a higher amount of income than what you should. It's biblical to, this is number 3 on your guiding principles. It's found in Proverbs 22:7, but to control your debt. So the concept there is to don't spend more than you make and not getting into a place where you're over your head and being beyond your means and beyond your wage. Stewardship is also a responsibility of paying your taxes, being grateful for what you've earned, and that's a part of it as well. This one doesn't seem to be quite on the screen, but let's see if I can see the top of it is just what stewardship looks like. So our financial goals are should be in consideration as a part of what you look at with your family. You should be talking with your spouse if you're married about what that should be, what your beliefs are personally and collectively, and what your goals are. And from our perspective, it was a little unique because what we decided was important financially for us and for our family was for our daughters to be at the academy, but we did not want them to be there on their own, meaning my oldest daughter is 3 years younger than my youngest daughter, so we didn't want to send her off to academy and not really know each other, and we wanted to become a part of the fabric of what they did and who we worked with, and we wanted to know their friends, and we wanted to be able to have an influence. We wanted to be able to go on mission trips. So in my little blurb there that Marty put together, we've had an opportunity to go to Kenya, to Africa, on a mission trip, to go to Panama, to do a variety of trips, and I've been involved with my children's friends. That is a goal that our family decided upon, that we economically saved for and sacrificed so that we had that opportunity to go for that experience. So that is an importance of stewardship, is determining your goals and also prioritizing how that should look. Additionally, stewardship is having accountability. It is to see if you're in track for what you want to accomplish. Accountability is on your handout as number 9, and Proverbs 27:17 actually refers to accountability. That could be your accountant, a financial advisor, a pastor, a family member, sitting down together with your spouse to look at where you're at and to understand what your goals are. Additionally, when we think of the things that you can do with your money, you actually can do 5 things with them. That's going to be found at the very bottom. But you use the money for your resources. You determine how much money is enough. What kind of amounts do I need to accumulate what I need in order to meet my goals and objectives? Giving is the opportunity to provide or give back what God has given you as a part of that. Paying down debt is an additional portion of how you give. Paying your taxes, growing your assets for long-term goals. I'll talk about that here in just a second. But the concepts of spending less than you earn, giving generous, avoiding debt, building cash flow, and setting long-term goals are all a part of those aspects. If you were to pull those into the handout, those are all found on that sheet, and I have a variety of texts. I'm happy to share those with you afterwards if you'd like. But I want to speak for a moment on setting long-term goals. So some simple concepts of planning are to accumulate, to set funds aside, to build, and then to invest those funds, and to have those funds invested in a way that takes advantage of time. Something that many of you are already doing is having funds set aside probably automatically for retirement and retirement plans. A question that I ask in looking at investments, is there anything that you would not feel comfortable profiting from? And if you think of that question for a moment, there are some investments that may be actually in accounts or in things that you, if you knew it, would not feel comfortable with that, such as tobacco, alcohol, pornography. Those types of things are actually quite often buried inside of funds. So there's screening tools that you can actually use to identify those types of things and what actually is positive in giving back. But from a concept of building, having those long-term goals, setting money aside, all works towards the objective of reaching your goals and objectives as well. Financial planning also looks at the fact that you have limited resources, and those resources are designed to go towards your objectives. And so you want to make sure that you understand that one area can impact the other. And so there are life stages. There are times when you're educating your children, you're planning for retirement, you're doing a variety of things. Each of these components are an important part of how to think of the way you grow. From the standpoint of a concept, what happens towards retirement and as you are planning your life is you want to cover your essential expenses. These are guaranteed things such as your homeowner's insurance, real estate tax, your utilities. You want those to be covered in retirement from guaranteed sources of income. Pensions, Social Security, funds that have accumulated with guaranteed returns. You want to also have the ability to cover your lifestyle expenses with additional accumulation and growth. You also want to be able to provide for the unexpected by way of making sure that you're insured for things that could keep you from reaching those goals or objectives, whatever that might be. Health insurance, disability coverage if you're still working, life insurance, those types of things. In my case, just over 15 years ago, I had the privilege of getting hit directly by Hurricane Charlie as it moved its way up the coast and took a little right-hand turn, went over my office, and shortly after hit my house. I can tell you that within 20 minutes of the storm passing, our phone was still in service. Our first call actually, before we let everyone know that we were okay, was to our insurance company to get on their list. Up to this point, and I still am not crazy about paying my homeowner's insurance premiums every time that big check goes out, but the reality was it covered that risk that I was not able to cover by just having assets to cover the cost of replacing our house. So we moved out of the house for 11 months, rebuilt it, which is actually the time that we bought property in Ellijay, Georgia, figuring that would be a good distance to evacuate to in the unlikely event you could get hit by a hurricane in Florida. And so that is something that's important as you look at expenses and you look at how that impacts your budget as well. And then the last part is leaving a legacy. Leaving a legacy is also found there in number 8. Proverbs 13:22 and Timothy 5:8 both refer to wisdom in that and what you leave. And that legacy can be to provide for your family. It can also be to provide for ministry and work that the Lord has in mind. So with that in mind, those are some general concepts for financial planning. There's several places to look for information. There is Kingdom Advisors. You can search that on Google. That information is going to provide some links where you can go in and find information on that. Rob West is the president of Kingdom Advisors, and he does a daily radio show called MoneyWise. Has anyone heard that before, MoneyWise? Many of you? And so there's a few resources there. If you have any specific questions on resources or ideas, you can actually type my name into a Google search. It will take you directly to my website, and there's some tools there. But you can also email me any questions, and I'd be happy to answer them for you, as well as obviously here, and happy to provide any answers that you may have as well. So I want to thank you for your time and consideration. And again, if you go through those general principles, each of those will have a text affiliated with it. And if you'd like more information on that, I can feel free to give it to you. So thank you so much.
The electronic one. All right, we're going to switch up a little bit. Franklin's not here yet. Tried calling, but you know how many dead spots there are coming this way on the cell phone. So anyway, I don't know if we could make an adjustment. I need to get my schedule here. Let's see. We're going to maybe switch this up a little bit. It's the name of the game, right? The mind of a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps, right? So, I don't know, Greg, could you just jump in here? Figure we're probably good either way, as long as the AV guy's good with that adjustment. Okay, he's got some handouts. Okay. See what we can do for you, okay?
So I'm not going to start my time till that's handed out. No. Actually, I'll go ahead and start while it's getting handed out. I'd like to actually start with a word of prayer, okay? Dear Father in heaven, thanks for the chance for us to be here as brothers. Lord, I ask that you would not make this a TED Talk, a Greg Talk, but make it a God Talk. Lord, join us. Thanks so much. In Jesus' name, amen. I'll start with some stories. I am a member of a road race team. We road raced 2 Corvettes, a 1986 and a 1987 Corvette. we run in a Lemons racing series, which runs junk cars. These are supposedly $500 cars with $8,000 worth of safety equipment in them. So we wear fire suits, Hans devices, all of that. Now, these are endurance races. They race on Sabbath and Sunday. I do not race on Sabbath. All of our team is not Adventists, and some don't mind racing on Sabbath, but I don't race on Sabbath. Anyway, we raced recently a race at Carolina Motorsports Park, an endurance race that usually lasts about 16 hours, 8 hours on Sabbath, 8 hours on Sunday, on a road course. And we went to this really last minute. I mean, one engine, we just put a new engine in a vet, and it had brake-in oil in it still, untried. Everything was untried on these cars. So we get out to the track, and guess what? It didn't go well. The first driver out, first car out, blew an engine. The engine lasted all of about 20 laps. After that engine blew, that car was down, and we thought we were done, but we had a good mechanic guy who actually replaced the engine that day. We were able to get the engine back in the car and get it running again. Well, the other car had all kinds of trouble. The reason that first engine blew, though, was because it didn't have an oil pressure gauge in it. It didn't have a water temperature gauge in it. What do you think about a team that goes to a race without gauges in the car? Anyway, these are junk cars, remember? So we had no time to test, no time to check all that stuff, to get it all installed. We had the stuff in boxes, but we didn't get time to get it done. The other car blew a transmission, and then we ended up with a car that had one front brake locked up on it. It spun the car, and we came off track, and we ended up looking for the problem, couldn't find it. We put more brake fluid in it, and then the driver in that car was passing. So he dropped it into the sand and spun the car across the track. But anyway, that compressed the tank on the Corvette, spewed gas all over it. It had a chain on the back of it that we used as a tow. The chain hit the ground and began sparking, and boom, came on. That car was on fire. And so thankfully, he was 100 yards from the finish line and pulled in and got it put out. So interesting storyline, huh? Not very successful. All of it is marked by a thing. There was one other thing. One car ran terribly. I was driving that car 35 miles an hour, as fast as this Corvette would go on a racetrack. And I was being passed at 110 miles an hour on both sides by other cars. Not fun if you're in the driver's seat doing that. Anyway, it turns out that car had a bad ballast resistor in it, which gave the ignition maybe 3 volts instead of 9 volts. Your ballast resistor, step it down some anyway. Not good, not good. So that's one story. And we're gonna tie back into this as we talk further. The other story is a story I witnessed actually last night. And my dad wouldn't like it. If he'd known I was going to tell a story on him, he would have stayed home, but he came with me today. Anyway, but last night I was at my dad's house. My mom had a terrible stroke last December. She's got Alzheimer's. And I was at my parents' house talking to my dad, telling him the good news that he had a second great-grandchild. I have a second grandchild born yesterday, so it was really good news. Sharing that news with him, sitting, and he was feeding my mom. She's pretty much 80% blind and non-responsive, and he's feeding her slowly. Takes him an hour and a half per meal to feed my mom. And so he's there, and he speaks to her kindly. He's very sweet. He kisses her on the hand. He kisses her on the cheeks. Try to do this without crying, sorry. Anyway, and I observed him, and I thought, man, there's an example of a strong man. There's an example of somebody who's doing what I want to do in my marriage, who's doing what I want to share with you guys to do in your marriage. He looks lovingly at this woman who's blind and pretty much blank, and occasionally there's a flash of her. If you've been around Alzheimer's people, you know they show up occasionally. And she'll occasionally show up, and there'll be a flash, and she'll say something. He hangs on to those. So I drove home with tears in my eyes last night, thinking, okay, that's what we're going to look at. So, do you guys know why most marriages fail? They fail because of neglect. Neglect. Because people don't have a lot of time. We don't make time. It's like that Lemons group, the Lemons race car group I'm part of. We didn't have time to get the gauges in. Didn't have time to road test these cars and try them out under stress. So we We failed. We finished the race, by the way. We weren't last. But they fail often to neglect. And neglect gets followed. Lots of things come up from neglect. People get addicted to things. They get into pornography, gaming, media, alcohol, drugs, and it simply drives more and more neglect. So the keys to a fantastic marriage are the opposite of that. They come from my dad and not the Lemons team, guys. All right. So the most important thing that you can do is invest time in relationships, time with your wife. Successful and happy families, happy wives, get lots of time with their husband. They get taken out on dates. They get talked to. They get listened to. They get validated. They get hugged and kissed. They get all kinds of good things their direction because the man makes them important and gives them the time of day. Go back to when you were young and you first were dating your woman. What did you do? You spent time with her. You called her. You talked to her. You couldn't spend enough time with her. Look at you now. What do you do now? If you've been married a while, you probably aren't doing all that. Anyway, so investing time is your answer. There's a communication principle that's important. It's called the 20-20-20 rule. And what that means is that when people talk, the first 20 minutes is somewhat trivial. The second 20 minutes gets deeper. And the third 20 minutes is the most important. I actually think there's probably 2 more 20s to it. It keeps going deeper if you keep going by 20-minute increments. And that results in the relationship getting better as you talk. The longer you talk, the more deep the conversation gets. A lot of guys say, yeah, I talk a long time to my wife. They talk in 10-minute increments 3 times a day. Well, you're in first gear. You run first gear that first 20 minutes. You get second gear after 20 minutes. You get third gear after 20 minutes. So if you always run in first gear, you got no land speed, all right? So you got to spend time. Nobody had to tell you that when you were dating, but it's important for all of us now. All right, so it's important. A block of time. Most women on average need to talk more than men, approximately 4 times more than men. Average woman needs to put out 4 times the word that you need to put out. Most of you know that, so that means good husbands are good listeners, all right? Do any of your wives have trouble going to sleep at night? Anybody have that issue? Yeah, raise your hand. Because they haven't talked enough. They haven't offloaded their junk for the day. That's your job. So if she's not sleeping good, it might be your fault. Start listening more. Thanks a lot. That was good. All right. So look, this is a strong men's conference, right? A strong man defends his household, doesn't he? Doesn't he defend his household? All right. How many of you have one of these? Raise your hand. Yeah, 2 of them, 4 of them. If you don't have one of those, how many of you have a computer in your house? Raise your hand. Right. So Satan's in your house already. Yeah, he's in your house. He's right here. He's in your computer, not a joke. All right, in my line of work, I'm a clinical psychologist. And I'll tell you that 70 to 90% of the guys that walk through the door in my office have got a pornography problem. They're looking at naked girls online. Jesus himself said, if you look at a woman to lust after her, you have done what? Sin worth there in your heart already. And what do you think? Is anybody going to heaven looking at pornography? No, nobody's going looking at pornography. And nobody's going to have a happy marriage looking at pornography. Promise, okay? You got to root that out. If you got it going on, get it out of there, all right? How many of you guys allow smartphones or TVs or computers in your bedrooms? You don't have to raise your hand because I'm going to beat you up if you do. All right. I hope you don't. That runs interference. How many of you watch TV or play with your smartphone during meals? Or let somebody sitting at your table play with their phone during meals? You're the leader. Man up. Some of you aren't doing that at the table. These are banned from the table, banned from the mealtime. Get the TV gone, get the smartphones gone, get the tablets gone. Have a meal like a normal human where you can communicate. Seriously, you miss out on bonding as a family unit if you let media come into your day as you're eating, okay? You don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you have seen pornography on your cell phone, or on your computer. Back in the day, it used to be you saw it in a magazine. That was kind of hard to do or embarrassing. Nowadays, it's not hard and not embarrassing, unfortunately. It's a major problem, all right? Again, research says 70 to 90% of guys struggle with pornography, all right? So be a strong man of God. Submit yourself to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you, okay? Get your devices out of the bedroom. Get them gone. Your bedroom's for talking, listening, cuddling, making love. That's it. And sleeping. All right? Do you know the average American, do you know how much time they spend on a cell phone or with a computer in front of their face a day? All right, 4 to 5 hours. 4 to 5 hours. Do you know how many times the average American touches one of these in a day? 2,600 times. Do you touch your wife 2,600 times a day? You do not. So you love this more than you love your wife. Oh, yeah. The average American does. So seriously, it is a major problem. They're talking about, I'm a psychologist, they're looking at cell phone addiction going into the next DSM. Not a joke. It's serious. People have withdrawals if you take their stinking cell phones. All right. So there's cocaine brain studies. A cell phone is just like cocaine for the brain. You give it to your teenager, they're like on cocaine. You might as well give them a jug of alcohol or a line of cocaine to give them one of these, especially if it's unfettered and you don't have protections on it. All right? So strong Christian men have strong values and strongly defend their house against Satan who comes in media. All right? Strong man is a leader. And you got to be the one that leads in blocking out that junk. Get it out of your house. All right? Manage it. Control it. Have media-free times, media-free zones in your house. You don't allow it in. Have protections on your media, guys. Seriously. Get Safe Eyes or Covenant Eyes, something like that out there on your phones, on your computers, so it blocks the trash that comes in. All right? So you're supposed to be the leader in all kinds of things. In communication, ask your wife how she is. You know they need to talk more than we do. So you ask, and then be quiet, and she'll talk. Most women will. And they'll tell you all about it. And oftentimes when they talk, they're going to tell you something about yourself that they don't like. You ever heard that before? Yeah, when they do, go ahead and man up. Don't be a wimp and point to other people and say it's somebody else's fault. Go ahead and man up and say, yep, I did that. Yep, I'm wrong. Yep, I'm sorry. Go ahead and take responsibility. What people don't understand, if you avoid responsibility, you avoid having the driver's seat. You hand off your steering wheel to someone else if you don't take responsibility. So go ahead and man up and say, yep, that's me. I'm responsible and I'm sorry. But ask your wife about her feelings, about her day. When she starts talking, practice active listening. Listen to her. Reflect what she's saying to you. Validate her. You don't have to agree to validate. If she says you're dumb and your mom dresses you funny, you don't have to agree with her. You can say, wow, I can understand why you'd see it that way. You know, you're not agreeing, but you can understand how she might see it that way. That's kind of a validation statement. But that's way better than saying you're stupid and ugly too. Then you got to fight. Okay, so you got to be a good listener to have a fantastic marriage, all right? Listen here, there's 5 steps to a good apology. A lot of people want to just say they're sorry and think that's it. That's not it, all right? So here they are. You start out by saying, I was wrong. That was wrong of me, what I did to you or didn't do. Number 2, I'm sorry I did that specific thing. Name it. What are you sorry for? Number 3, I'm going to make a commitment to you not to repeat that. I'm not doing it again. I won't do that again. And maybe you got to tell her how you're going to not do it again. If you got caught with liquor in the closet again, just saying you're not doing it again may not be enough. If you got caught with pornography again, saying you won't do it enough may not be enough. You may have to say, I'm going to join a men's group. I'm going to get an accountability partner. I'm going to put blockades on all my devices, okay? That's what you do to say, I'm not doing it again. Number 4, you say, will you forgive me? Be humble enough to ask that question. It's a hard question to ask somebody, will you forgive me? Ask the question. Number 5, how can I make it up to you? It's called making amends. All these are biblical principles, so you make amends. How can I make it up to you? How can I fix it? All right? And it's important with a spouse to brainstorm, how are you going to keep from falling in the same ditch again? All right? So there's a little piece of research I want you to know about. That is that people that make a decision to do something have a 25% chance of succeeding. So just decide today you're going to make changes in your marriage, and you got a 25% chance of that happening. Now, if you'll write it down and post it somewhere that you can see it every day, on your mirror, somewhere like that, post it, and where you look at it every day and you read it, you have a 65% chance of succeeding, all right? You gain more by writing it and posting it than by the original decision. But one builds on the other. You can't do one without the other. So that's really important. Now, if you get an accountability partner, you get somebody that loves you, that's going to ask you every week, hey, are you doing this? Hey, you doing that? Hey, you doing what you said you're going to do? You doing what's on your list? An accountability partner gets you another 20%. So you get 80 to 85% chance of succeeding if you actually do those steps. You write it, you post it, and you get an accountability partner that's going to harass you about it. All right? So I don't know what our time's looking like. It's probably gone. But anyway, my encouragement to you guys is to be a strong warrior for Jesus. Submit yourself to him first. The devil's not fleeing from anybody. The devil will flee from Jesus Christ and his shed blood, not from you or me. So we have to be filled with him. Pray for a daily baptism of his Spirit, okay? We don't have time, but Galatians 5 gives us in 5:19 to 22, write it down and read it later. Galatians 5:19 to 22 talks about the works of the flesh versus the fruits of the Spirit, okay? I can promise you I've never worked with a marriage that was in trouble because they had too much of the works of the Holy Spirit. Every relationship I've ever dealt with that was in trouble in my office had too many of the works of the flesh, I promise you. That's what it was. So pride got to go away, all right? So commit to talking. If you don't hear anything else from me, commit to spending time with your woman and minimizing media in your life. Post this stuff up as a goal and look at it daily. Get an accountability partner, and God will bless you in having a fantastic marriage. These are some keys. There's more. If you're in trouble, in deep trouble, get a professional to try and help you, because there's a lot more to say. All right? God bless you guys.
Man, you just implement a couple of those things. They're game changers, I'm telling you. Is there any bigger arena of our life, men, those of us that are married, than the marriage? I mean, just to be able to increase joy in a marriage is only possible because of God. And spending time. If there's one thing that I could say for my life is just recently is spending quality time with my wife. And we're busy, but just stopping, just giving her time. Your children, it's time. Started with time management, right? It's just time. And the only way you can have the time is put the big rocks in. Then things will take care of themselves. Have some margin. And all these technology devices give the illusion that we can do more. But just because you have it on your Google Calendar doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? In fact, it can get so tight, it's just ridiculous. So anyway, spending time with your spouse to have a strong marriage, and then spending time with your children. So that's where we're going to go next. And Franklin is here, he's in the back, but we're going to watch a short video that we put together a couple of years ago, actually. And it's a really great story about a father and a son. So if that's ready to roll, we'll go ahead and watch that. It's about 6 minutes.
I was about 3 or something. Just watching the cars. I've always wanted to be in it and experiencing it, but back then I wasn't old enough to.
I sold that car and kind of went without a Porsche for a while, thinking, well, I'll get back into it when he comes along and we can do it together. When we were teaching Jack how to drive, it's like, okay, it won't be long.
You only need a driver's license to start driving on the track.
I didn't want to over talk it up, but once he started showing interest, I was ready to jump in with both feet.
So then it started to become a possibility for me to drive, which I was excited but a little anxious.
There's got to be something that a father-son share together. It can't just be a passing comment or just an occasional meal or just some general family time. There's got to be something you can bond over, talk about, dream about, experience together.
We wanted a track-specific car.
There's a friend of ours, old car guy. One day at church, he came up to me, he said, "You need to get a car." I said, "Oh, really? Where is it?" "Over there on Appleton Pike," which is just around the corner from us. Went up, knocked, and the gentleman came out and I said, "You wouldn't happen to have an old car in a barn back here?" He said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Is it a Porsche?" He said, "Yeah, it is, in fact."
When we first saw the car, a barn had collapsed on it. There were also body panels missing, along with everything else. No windows, no seats, and the heart, which is the engine, it was gone.
So we bought it for $1,000. Immediately thought of an engine that I knew had existed and been built years ago by a friend of mine. And unfortunately, he had gotten killed in a motorcycle accident soon after he had built a special purpose 2.7 liter 911 engine. And his brothers and I are still close, and they had kind of kept it in a barn. The engine was on a pallet wrapped in shrink wrap. It had the car tub and an engine, and that was the two big pieces I thought that I needed, unbeknownst to me that really was just a tip of the iceberg of all the other pieces that had to be collected. If it hadn't been for the engine that had the nostalgia of my friend, I might have backed away, but I wanted to kind of see it through. Just had to slow down, take a deep breath, and say, okay, this is going to take some time, and not get overwhelmed by the totality of it all. The project really wasn't advancing. We had some setbacks with the engine. We had some setbacks with some details that weren't quite shaking out. And up until picking up the car, it had not been run under its own power.
Hey, better late than never.
Start flipping switches and hear whines and grunts and moans, and then hit that start button, and then all this sound and noise and vibrations come to life. And to have that engine run, knowing that my friend had worked on it over 20 years ago, there's memories and a bond back to when he was alive. You know, here it is 20 years later, and part of him is still living through that engine. It has a nice song. It really does. Two weeks leading up to our first track day were very nerve-wracking for me.
Leading up to it, I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to drive because it was a new car.
We're just thinking, okay, are the brakes going to work? Is the engine going to hold up? It never has been run more than 15 minutes, and we're going to go out on a track with it. Am I willing to drive this car at speed? Am I willing to let my son drive this car at speed? It's really the bigger question. You know, just kind of had to take a step of faith and say, okay, I want him to have a hobby that we both can enjoy. I want to push him to go out and do something he's never done before, and know that I've given him the best opportunity, the best safety equipment to reach something new and perform at a different level.
Thought went through my head about stalling. I don't want to stall on pit lane because that'd be really embarrassing. So I prevented that from happening, and the marshal signaled me out and pulled out onto the track, and I was going highway speed.
First lap, he comes around kind of safe. I'm on the overhand stands. The second lap, he comes buzzing by, going way faster than I ever was going, and it sounded good, and he looked good. To hear the car run and to see him driving it at speed was topping it all off. It was well worth it at that point in time.
All right, this is Jack Farrow. He's 5.5 years old.
If it's not a car project a father and son can share, I think a father should be looking for something. It's just the father's interest in the son's interest is the most important thing. The time of working on something together, of having a common topic, a common hobby, is far more important than a piece of material and a machine. Both our names are on the car, but it's both of our interests tied together. It's the engagement, the connectivity that comes out of that is what's really important at the end of the day.
Good afternoon. There seems to be a theme going on. Greg, thank you for your car story. I wanted to hear a little more about that sometime. But I am Franklin Farrow, and that was my son and myself in that video. And Marty asked for me to talk a little bit about our experience as being a father and a son together. And you heard quite a bit in the video. But I also have a 16-year-old daughter, which is another whole experience. And I don't know that there would be a full-featured film that could take all the time to share what it's like to have her in our family as well. But this particular film that you just saw obviously is a story of my son and myself, and you can see that we've always, over the years, even when he was little, we enjoyed things that moved and things that had wheels, and we've enjoyed sharing this project together. I think if there's a couple of things I want to come back and touch on again this afternoon is time. It is so important to put aside time, and Greg mentioned that with the family and the wife, and especially how that starts with your marital relationship. And as you have those children, your time gets divided by obvious reasons. So what I found to do, and one of the number one things that I did, and this is back in the dark ages before internet was a big deal, but my wife and I chose not to have a TV in our home. That created a lot of time. Because we weren't distracted by, what we're going to watch, what we're going to do. We just filled in that time with hobbies and projects and being with our kids. So for us, that was a major decision, a choice that we made that created time for us. Obviously today, things are a bit different with devices always right there in your hands, and that's another challenge that we're obviously all having to face and deal with. But creating time and being intentional about time is something that was important to me. And I now can see the benefits of that. My son started his freshman year at Southern Adventist University this year, taking the pre-engineering program. It's exciting to see some of the things that we were doing all along the way in his childhood are now things that he's thinking about doing as he gets older and starts a career. But time has been one of those major things. And then you also heard what I said there in a little bit toward the end was taking interest in his interests. Fortunately, he was interested in cars. Thank goodness, because I've always been interested in cars. But even if he hadn't been, I think I would have still tried to find things that was interest to him. He has interest in music, so we both got guitars together. He has interest in mountain biking. We both mountain bike together. I, with my daughter, have to find different interests. It's a lot harder, I'll be honest, to be a father when you're having to split your time between the two kids and then engage in their interests. So my daughter needed a dog, and we talked about dogs for the last couple of years, resisting the fact that we really didn't need that extra responsibility, but now that's our thing that we're sharing together, and we're playing tennis together and hiking together, and we'd like to go eat Thai food together, and we have to find those bonding points for her just as much as it is for him. As we move forward, we're in a transition right now. So with a son in college, a daughter, a junior in Collegedale Academy, we're getting closer to not having them around. They're both driving. They're both gone a lot. So when they're here at home, doing something at home, it's my interest latching on again to their interest in a different way. It's with friends. It's hard to get one-on-one time. So how do I embrace their friends and their hobbies and the lack of having one-on-one time always? One thing that I've done to help supplement that is we try very hard to have worship 4 or 5 times a week. Usually it's on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday based on their school schedule in the mornings, and we try to pick it up on Tuesday and Thursday in the evening. So almost once a day during the weekdays, we're trying to have family worship. And that 15 minutes are precious minutes to me. And I think it is to them. They never complain because it's something that we started doing back when they were toddlers. And that tradition is now paying off because they know that's just what we do as a family. When we are together and the friends are always around, and I appreciate having their friends there. I want them to be close to our home so I know where they are and what they're doing. We welcome their friends, and we just carry on life as if it was normal. We have worship with their friends. We eat with their friends. We play together with their friends. We select the movies that they should watch and talk about the ones they shouldn't watch. So it's a different element of life, but it's still one that we're blending our interests together and making time. So I don't know if there's anything else, Mara, you want me to touch on, but those are the most important elements I think that I have going forward as a father, looking to the past and going forward. And looking to the future, be the grandkids maybe 10 years from now. What will that feel and look like? I don't know, but some of you have had the chance to experience that already. Greg mentioned that as well, and that'll be another whole avenue. But I am proud and blessed that we've been able to experience these few precious moments together and challenge you to make those opportunities in your life available as well. Thank you.
Okay, Franklin and I, we've spent some time together, different places, and so I've gotten to know and love Franklin and his family. And back to my 59 story. Okay, this is a 17 story. Can you tell them the 17 story? Your number, all the stuff that connected with the number 17. This is you notice the number on the car is 17. Well, guess how old his son was when they did this project? 17. Guess what year it was? 2017. Anyway, God is into the details. And when you see a car that is a classic that's been restored like what they did, it's really cool. So anyway, it's actually, we're going to take a little break now, just 10 minutes or whatever if you need to take a drink and drain. But the little car's outside. If you want to take a look at it, Franklin's got it out there, and maybe he'll even start it up. I don't think there's free rides, though. Anyway, but you've got it on. Tell them a little bit what you got lined up in the next few weeks with that little car.
Oh, yeah. My son and I share a little thing, a little saying together. If you're not in over your head, you're not in. So we are constantly getting in over our heads, and so we had it out at the Fall Historics down at Road Atlanta last weekend. We've got it for a wedding of one of our close friends tomorrow. And then this coming weekend, downtown Chattanooga is a motor car festival, and it's entered into the time trials. So if you guys are downtown Chattanooga this coming Friday, you can see it running with the historic race cars downtown, Riverfront Parkway. So we're having fun.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Franklin. Give him a hand again. That was a challenging message and good